Another visit from the grey tit to Biddy's nest. What does that mean for Biddy and Miley? Welcome back to the channel. And yes, it is true, the grey tit is showing more and more interest in this nest box. It was here again, first thing in the morning on the 29th. One thing I will say is though, it hasn't brought any partner. This does look like a dull-ish grey tit in the sense that it's not as saturated as I would imagine in colour as a male, so I do think it's a female, but that is only speculation on my part. We then had a couple of very quiet days due to some stormy cold weather here in Ireland, and that tends to put the birds off nesting, and it did just that. You can see here we jump to the 1st of April. What I believe to be Miley hops in, and why I know this is because Biddy follows suit. You can see Miley hunkering down over in the corner, waiting for the arrival of Biddy. Eventually, Biddy arrives and promptly tells him to leave. She then has a quick look round and then suddenly remembers why she is there, to build a nest, and she ducks straight into a nesting shuffle. And I want you to take a close look at Biddy and just take a look at her features. Quite a scruffy face. You can see some speckles of the black feathers underneath the white coming through, and then the back of her head, the white band on the back of her head is broken by the crest of blue on the top. And compared to these two that hop in now, this visit of blue tits isn't Biddy and Miley. So we see the male hop in, hunker down in the corner as we know males to do, and just look at that female. A much smoother face, and the white band goes directly around the back of her head, but she doesn't hang around, and I wouldn't hang around if I knew Biddy could come in at any moment. And so an hour later we see Miley hop in, and again, how do I know this is Miley? Well, because Biddy's is soon in after, and again you can see just how much scruffier Biddy is compared to the previous female. And I've seen these two pairs go at it outside. They kind of chase each other around a tree, and eventually Biddy and Miley always seem to be the ones chasing the other pair off. But the other pair is showing interest in this nest box and do take a look in at it every so often. As we see, even an hour later, the other male is back checking it out again and coaxes his female into the box again to have a nosy. A fine looking bird, but she never seems to hang around for that long, and quite possibly that bird could be Mindy. And as if Biddy and Miley haven't had enough visitors, the grey tit then visits an hour later from the previous shot again. Biddy and Miley are really going to have to be quite territorial about their nest box if they're going to want to keep it. There is a lot of interest being shown in this nest box right now. So what is Biddy's response to all these intruders coming into her new home? Well, Biddy does what Biddy does best. Biddy gets busy, and she starts bringing in a load of nest material again. You can see I've sped this up just to show you all the footage as to see the whole nest progression. And Biddy tends to do this in nest building. She'll kind of go off for a few hours and you won't really see her. And then suddenly she will go and do loads of nest building all at once within an hour to 2 hours to even 3. And I've seen her sometimes in previous years really just build all day if she's really in a rush. And she's starting to get a little bit more confident in the volume of material she's starting to bring in. She's bringing in more and starting to fill out that nest box. And if you have been watching my nest box series over the years, you will know that it is only the females that do the nest building. The males at this time do sit out on a perch above the nest box, or at least very nearby, and tends to be singing to show that this is their territory and for no other birds to come nearby. If another pair of blue tits come around, Biddy and especially Miley will chase them away. We saw last year Biddy and Miley tackle a grey tit to the floor last year, which was quite something else, as usually grey tits have the run of things, but not with Biddy and Miley, not at all. And you may be missing the outside camera from last year, and indeed I am too. But as I said, I moved out from my parents' place and put this nest box up as a whim to see if Biddy and Miley would come back, as I was hoping to get them in my new nest boxes in my new home with the new cameras. But unfortunately, the birds in my new spot had different ideas. They didn't take to the nest box, so I'll have to try to find a better position for next year. But thankfully, Biddy and Miley never let the side down, and amn't I glad that I set up a camera here as well. It's funny how some places get all the attention. Just look at this, we can see the other pair of blue tits here visiting again. Quite possibly Mindy and Mork from last year, from the top view nest box that got some residents last year and had our successful brood. Quite possibly could be them, but again, we don't know. But just look at the time here, it's 4 minutes past 8 on the 4th. And just 2 minutes later, Biddy is back in the box and looking scruffier than usual. She may have got into a fight, who knows. But whatever happened out there, the nest still needs to be built, and she goes right back at it and starts going into some nesting shuffles. And the tough words don't stop there. We see Miley come in a little bit, showing off and posturing, and then Biddy comes in afterwards and he shoots back out. If I was to guess, I would say that other pair of blue tits were in and around the nest box there, and that was them laying claim to it. But that doesn't stop Biddy doing a little bit of housekeeping. And it also doesn't stop those other pair of blue tits coming back. Here they are again, just an hour later, arriving in. The male first, of course, followed by the female. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out as I go through the footage of the coming days. As we have seen on the live stream, that Biddy has the nest pretty much completely built. So when did these visitors stop showing interest? It's going to be interesting to find that out as I go through the footage. So what happens if the blue tits arrive when Biddy is in the nest? Well, I believe this is what happens here. You can see Biddy in the nest, and then something disturbs her. She hops up straight to the hole and straight away is in quite a defensive position. And as we don't have the outside camera, we can only speculate of what's going on. My guess is those two just arrived, and that was Biddy sending them on their way. She reflects on her small victory for a while, and then eventually decides to head off. And so with that, Biddy does a spat of nest building. I don't know where she finds the time, in between grey tits intruding her nest box and rival pairs of blue tits. A bird's work is never done. But Miley seems to be doing his part. Here he is here bringing in some food for Biddy. That's surely showing her that he's going to be able to provide for these chicks. And I really hope that is the case, as I am really rooting for Biddy and Miley this year. After their 2 failed attempts over the last 2 years, I would love to see them raise some chicks. And by the look of some of your comments that you have been leaving on the previous videos, you are also rooting for these birds. These birds have a lot of support at the moment, and I'm really hoping, as I've said before. But it has to be said, we will have to curb our expectations. As we all know too well, The game of life can be a tricky one to win, and even harder again to raise some young. But with that being said, that doesn't stop us rooting for these little birds. And as we're coming to the end of this video, we have yet another visit from the rival pair of blue tits. We get a good look at both of them as the male stays in as the female comes in. This female doesn't seem to shout at her male when he stays in the box. Something I've noticed from Mindy and Mork last year. A very pretty pair of birds. I will say though, I've never seen this female do any nesting shuffle in the box yet. And we see here just 10 minutes later that they are back again. Again, no nesting shuffle, just a quick look round and proceeds to leave. And exactly 20 minutes later, Biddy is back in the box building her nest. So by the end of the fourth, there was quite a bit of progress made in the nest compared to the start of the video. A lot more material has been brought in. Competition for the nest box seems to be intensifying. And Biddy seems to be spending more and more time throughout the day building this nest. So how will all this play out? Well, we're just going to have to see, and you guys are just going to have to stay tuned and see in the upcoming videos. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. It means a lot to me when you guys subscribe, and leave a comment of what you think, how this is all going to play out, and who you're rooting for. I myself was rooting for Biddy. I'd love to see her raise some young this year. So with that, bye bye.